You've heard of the 4 Ps of marketing, correct? What is it? Product, price, place, and promotion. So how do you position your early products given that formula?
Well, the price is never the reason for buying anything, and I repeat that over and over again. People always think it's the price, and yet there's several stories in the last couple of months about the most elite suppliers of purses, and the most powerful purse, the most exciting purse, cost $50,000, handmade in leather in France.
It's like the Birkin bags.
Yes, the Birkin bag. When people see that you're carrying that kind of a bag, they go, ooh, and your esteem, your prestige, your intelligence, everything about you is magnified because you're wearing or you're carrying a beautiful, expensive bag. My point was, it's not the price, it's the prestige.
Welcome to the Brian Tracy Experience. I am joined by my siblings, David, the brave, Catherine, the magnificent, and of course, the doctor, Tina Tracy Stein. And then, of course, let's not forget the Brian Tracy himself. The theme today is marketing.
Yes.
Dad, you're known as a sales expert and a guru, but marketing is the broader category.
Yes.
I believe you've had some interesting kind of origination stories in being introduced to marketing for this first time as a copy editor in Africa. Can you talk about that?
Well, I was struggling at one time selling for a stationery company, and I saw an ad in the paper for a copywriter for an advertising agency, and I went and applied for the job. And after interviewing me, the gentleman was very nice. I'll never forget it. Very polite, very courteous. And he looked at me and he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You don't know anything about advertising, and you're here applying for a job as a copywriter. You don't even know what a copywriter is." And I said, "Well, what advice would you give me?" He said, "Read something on the subject before you apply for a job in the industry." So that set me off on a reading jag. I went down to the public library and checked out and read 20 books on advertising and copywriting. And meanwhile, I decided this is a challenge. So I took out a list of the advertising agencies in the city, the top 20, and I began calling and applying for a job from the bottom up. And every time they rejected me, which they did every time, I said, "What advice can you give me to do a better interview next time?" And they did. They were such nice people. I thought, darn, I want to be in this industry. And I kept going. I kept working at a department store at that time, and I kept my job and worked my way up. And finally, I got to number 2, second biggest agency in Africa, as a matter of fact, in Johannesburg. And they hired me. And I had a job, and it was Friday, and I was starting on Monday. And because I got a little bit better, more knowledgeable, read books, practiced everything else. So by the time I got to number 2, I was ready for the job. And then they called me Friday afternoon and said, "Alas, we have to withdraw our job offer because the person you were going to replace has decided to stay." And I was just crushed. And they said, "But we have some very good friends at the number 1 agency in the country, and we've called them and told them about you, and they would like you to work for them. And they want you to start on Monday morning." I almost couldn't believe it. I was so happy. I was so ecstatic. I quit my job on Friday afternoon at the department store. And Monday morning, I started with the biggest agency in the country, biggest agency in the continent for that matter.
Before we go further, what is copywriting?
Well, copywriting is where you write advertising. And I learned how to write advertising at that time. And I have sold about $300 million worth of products in my lifetime from advertising that I have written, because it grabs people. Good copywriting dominates the world. Almost everybody who's watching has bought an enormous amount of stuff because of the way it was described. And you read the description and said, "That's for me. I want that." And so I learned it. I was better than any of the other copywriters in the company. Over the years, I've been a top copywriter for many organizations. I have a natural flair for writing good copy. And the good copy basically causes people to want to buy the product now. And so everybody who's watching this, if you want to become wealthy, I really strongly advise you to read a really good book. Just go to Amazon, look for the book with the best stars on copywriting, and read at least one book on the subject so you know how to ask people to buy your product. It's astonishing how 80% of products and services fail. And the number one reason they fail is not because they're not good products, it's because they're poorly described. And they're so poorly described in comparison with others. Remember, everything you do is in comparison with something else and someone else who also wants to sell a similar product to the same people. And if your copywriting, if your advertising is not more attractive, then they will buy from someone else. And once they buy from someone else, if they're happy, they'll never come back. And the number one reason for business success is high sales. And the number one reason for high sales is good copy, good advertising, good promotion.
So David, Kat, Christina, have you guys seen any good advertisements or good copy that's compelled you recently to buy something?
I mean, I think that what stands out to me, and this is something you teach, Dad, is just the idea that when you're describing the benefit of your product or service, and the idea that if you see something, some copyright, it's, oh, I want that. Like, so you always want it to be a positive thing that somebody wants, as opposed to promoting, a problem or talking about something negative, and like one example you give, Dad, too, is it's like for the title of a book, right? You want the title of a book to be something that if you were to carry that book around in public, you wouldn't be embarrassed to be learning about it, right? So that it would be like a positive thing that people would be like, oh, what book is that? Oh, you're reading that book. So, and this comes up too, like, when we're teaching people how to present in Speaking Academy, we want them to talk about the benefits of their program, the transformation, the positive outcomes, so that the person listening is like, how do I get more of that? How do I find that?
I think it's important too, when you talk about good copy, it's not always designed to sell you something. Sometimes it's designed to create a viral campaign on social media.
Yes.
The recent example I can think of is American Eagle, the denim jean brand. They had that Sydney Sweeney woman on there selling denim jeans, talking about how she's got good jeans. And a lot of people got pissed off, right? Saying,
blonde hair, blue eyes. Yeah.
Blonde hair, blue eyes. She's got good jeans. These are all references to, I don't know. It's not just about selling something. It's about getting people to have an emotional reaction and share things. And sometimes it's about creating anger in people and frustration, because then they're going to talk about it. They're going to talk about it for weeks and months. And, eventually you'll get the money. People will eventually buy the products. But nowadays, with the, attention being the most valuable commodity, if you can get somebody to promote your product by creating a viral campaign, it's going to pay dividends. So
yeah. Isn't the phrase like any publicity is good publicity?
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad press.
Like Christina, for example, Speakers Academy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
People don't buy the 3 days that they get to spend with you and Brian. They buy the confidence they'll have to professionally speak at the end.
Yes.
They're paying for the result.
Well, yeah, people come in who are like passionate and excited about their expertise, or they want to, get paid to speak. They're looking to improve their confidence as a public speaker or just a communicator in general. And we spend 3 days, and you make, you're right, Michael. It's not the 3 days that we're spending together, but it's the ability to organize your ideas in a clear, linear way that you can communicate clearly to others, so you can convince them to take action. And, we have to be clear ourselves. And so learning that, or gaining the confidence to, speak up and show enthusiasm about your product and service, you cultivate that when you're spending time together at the Speaking Academy. So you walk out of there connected to the people with you, which is a benefit that, we don't actually promote, but the people who go through this program end up being best friends. I mean, I have all these groups of people who've gone through this program, and they have this relationship and connection to each other that is this ongoing support system, which is amazing. But yeah, the results of going through that program are what people are signing up for, not sitting in a room for 3 days. And yes, they do enjoy hanging out with Brian. That's definitely a perk. But however you're communicating to other people, when you actually organize your ideas and you have a formula that you do it with, there's so much more impact, and like, your goal in speaking is to convince somebody to do something that they wouldn't have done prior to hearing you. And so you have to be clear about what you're asking them to do, so that they're excited to take that action. And it really starts with you having the clarity and the formula. So it's a really awesome experience.
One of the most effective ways of marketing is being able to take a stage and communicate an idea or a message or a call to action in a compelling, influential way. I know, David and I did a lot of cold calling and door-to-door sales. And one of the best ways to make a pitch is, instead of making 100 phone calls, it's to take a stage in front of 100 people, for 15 or 20 minutes. And so it's a very, very effective way of selling, whether you're selling a product or service or just an idea, an idea or an opportunity. You've heard of the 4 Ps of marketing, correct? What is it? Product, price, place, and promotion. So how did you position your early products given that formula?
Well, the price is never the reason for buying anything. And I repeat that over and over again. People always think it's the price. And yet there's several stories in the last couple of months about the most elite suppliers of purses, and the most powerful purse, the most exciting purse, costs $50,000. It's handmade in leather in France.
This is like the Birkin bags.
Yes, the Birkin bag. All women who don't live under stones have heard about the Birkin bag. The point is that there's Chanel and Gucci, Pucci, and Cartier. These all cost 10 times as much as their competitors with no names. And you know something? They're sold out, and people have to line up, and you have to make an appointment, and you have to demonstrate that you have an enormous amount of money. And then you go at your appointment time, and the guard lets you in, so you can go and spend 10 times as much on a purse or on perfume or something else. And why? So people say, oh, price is the key. Are you kidding? These people are lining up to pay 10 times as much for exactly the same results or benefit of a bag or perfume or something else.
I've heard you have to actually spend a bunch of money on not just the bag. You have to spend a bunch of money, and then if you spend enough, you're invited then to buy the Birkin bag.
That's just Birkin bags. The rest of the companies do it completely different.
Right. Okay.
And so, with the topic of bags, like some bags actually maintain resale value, but there's only a few top brands that actually maintain resale value. So as an investment, you'd only want to buy like those 3.
When people see that you're carrying that kind of a bag, they go, ooh, and your esteem, your prestige, your intelligence, everything about you is magnified because you're wearing or you're carrying a beautiful, expensive bag. My point was, it's not the price, it's the prestige.
I want to say something about like the tying this into the marketing piece, right? Because I know people who will buy a fancy car and dress a fancy way, even if they're not financially successful, because it lets people think they're successful and it gets them in the door to possibly have more opportunities. So sometimes it's, it's the prestige, but it's also the way you're marketing yourself or you're branding yourself to show that you have achieved success. So other people trust your knowledge and skills.
So what's the difference between marketing and manipulation?
Well, so manipulation and influence are different, David. Marketing is designed to influence a buying decision. Manipulation is like, I think, a little bit more. It's almost like it's like false advertising. Like taking a pill, for example, and losing weight and gaining muscle and becoming like a super cool looking dude or chick. That's like, that pill's not going to do that. That's probably like manipulation. Versus like good marketing would be like, if you take this pill, the supplement over the course of like 3 months, maybe you'll have clearer skin and you'll have like more energy or something like that.
I wrote a program. I've written more than 100 programs, but I wrote one program on branding. And I may have mentioned this before, but it's really important. It's called the 21 Secrets of Branding. In other words, and branding is the reputation that you have with the person you're trying to influence, not only before they meet you, but afterwards. So we say in my book on the 32 most important laws of money and success is your reputation is what people say about you after they have had business relations with you or met you as a friend and so on. What do people say about you? What words do they use? And especially what words do you want them to use? And here's the most important point that I learned in all my research on branding is that your brand, which is your reputation, your name, your word, the way you're thought of by others, your brand is composed of 2 things: the promises you make when you ask a person to buy your product or service, and the promises you keep afterwards. The promises you make and the promises you keep. So you said manipulation. Manipulation is where you don't keep your promises. What is branding? Well, the way people think about you as a good person, a positive person, a person of character, of quality, and so on. That's because you keep your promises. And in life, one of the most important things that you do is you keep your promises. You develop a reputation so that people always say he, she is a completely honest person. Whatever they say. Now, one last point. is Emerson said that the aim of good speaking is for the person to take an action as a result of your speech that they would not have taken in the absence of your speech. And for you to be this kind of a speaker, or even this kind of a friend, or this kind of a salesperson or entrepreneur, you must be clear, crystal clear about the action that you would like the other person to take. And the other person must be crystal clear at the end of your conversation of the act that you want them to take. What do you want them to do, and how will they benefit from it? So this is really, really important. This is the essence. I had a long meeting with a man who started off with nothing in a small town in interior British Columbia. Today he's worth $130 million. He wrote a very good book on his success, and he started from the bottom and worked his way up. But here's the bottom line that I wanted to mention. He said the most important skill that you can have to be successful is the skill of persuasiveness, your ability to persuade people to take an action that they would not have taken in the absence of your persuasion. And that comes back to what you were saying, Christina, about the Speakers Academy and speaking. Is you have to have the ability to stand up in front of people, and at the end, to have them take an action in their benefit, the benefit of their company, whatever, have them take an action that would not have taken in the absence of your influence. And so that's the key to persuasion.
So when it comes to the business interactions, then you basically think about the action you want somebody to take, and you reverse engineer the experience.
Yes.
So even with the talk, like for Speakers Academy, it's like, what action do I want my audience to take, and then how does the talk get them there?
I think it's really important, because we're talking about persuasion and sales and marketing and honesty, that like you genuinely believe in what you're selling. I think that like the more authentic you are in it, like when you're promoting a product or service, or you're asking somebody to take an action to achieve certain results, you have to know and believe that those results are genuinely good for that person. Like the more authentic you are in trying to persuade somebody to do something, the more effective you are. If you're trying to manipulate them or trick them into buying, people are smart and they know, they feel it, they get it, and they aren't willing to listen.
Yeah, then you will need to manipulate the seller, because you won't actually believe it.
So if you have a product or service that's really great, that's basically encourages people to be fanatical about it, like become fans about their products and services, then you're basically turning your customer into an unpaid salesperson.
Turn your customers into your salespeople.
When I learned at the beginning of my career, which has been one of the most important things in the whole world for me, is to guarantee everything I ever did, 100%. So I would say that if you're not happy for any reason, there's no charge. If you're not happy from books, tapes, courses, audio, seminars, anything, if you're not happy, there's no charge. And people say, would you give that kind of a guarantee? I said, yes. You should not have to pay for something if you're not happy with the result or benefit. And on that basis, I worked with companies. I said, look, let's offer an unconditional guarantee. And then I began to study the work that's been done in market research on guarantees. And I found the most amazing thing. The shorter the guarantee, the higher the return rate. The longer the guarantee, the lower the return rate. So we used to start off by giving a 1 week guarantee, then a 1 month guarantee, then a 3 months guarantee, and then a year's guarantee. And we found the return rate on a 1 week guarantee is 50% or more. On a 1 month guarantee, it's maybe 35 or 40%. On a 3 month guarantee, it's maybe 10%. On a 1 year guarantee, it's less than 5%. And so then I came over some research that said, what about a lifetime guarantee? You can give it back at any time in the course of your life. And you know what I found is that Nordstrom has a lifetime guarantee. If you're not happy for any reason, you can have your money back, no questions asked. And we sold, as I mentioned earlier, $300 million worth of audio programs over the course of the years because we offered such sweeping guarantees.
So if you were starting out that and you created a product, would you start with 100% money back guarantee?
No, I only learned that when I was in my 20s, maybe even in my 30s, and when I began to speak. And then I offered audio programs and other products for sale at my speaking occasion. I only learned it then because I found that the more the product is, let's say, esoteric, or a friend of mine used to say it was canned air when you're speaking because you can't hold on to it. So I found that you have to build credibility so your product is more believable. And one of the best ways to make it more believable is to unconditionally guarantee it for an unconditional amount of time. And I studied the subject exhaustively, far more than virtually anybody else in the industry, to find that one-liner is the longer the guarantee, the lower the return rate.
Well, and one unhappy customer on average, tells 10 people
Yes.
about their bad experience. And so by having a guarantee, at least you're taking that person out of the equation.
Well, it used to be that a happy customer would tell 7 or 8 people, an unhappy customer would tell 13 to 15. But that was before the internet. Today, an unhappy customer can tell 100,000 people what a bad deal they have. And if you want to check on people's level of satisfaction, just you ask chat. God, chat will either make you or break you, because they will look for every single unhappy mention of your product or service in the cloud and consolidate it into a quick report. Everything is contrast and comparison. I learned this many years ago in one of the very best books on selling. Everything that you do, you compare it with what else is available, and it's contrast. How does it contrast? How is it superior? How does it look, sound, feel, smell, and so on? And so you have to win in this comparison, in this contest, if you like, because they're looking at you and every other similar product or service that can do what you offer to do. And you're right, Michael, about the number of stars. I used to think 4 stars. Boy, that's really good. Today, I wouldn't even touch. I look at movies. You look at the movie ratings on Prime, and there's the stars. Well, if it doesn't have 5 stars, which means it's above 90%, you don't even think about watching it. It's fully on that.
That kind of a really high bar if we're only accepting 5 stars in terms of reviews like that. That makes it very challenging for new businesses who don't have 5 stars, who are just starting out to really prove themselves, or just, people, whatever products, services, whatever it is you're doing. If our mentality is shifting to be like, it's got to have 5 stars or it's not worth even giving it a try. There are a lot of manipulations that companies do. Like, I've had a situation with a company where before they finished the job, they requested a review on Google and Yelp, and they requested a 5-star review before they would complete the job. So if I have to give a 5-star review in order to get the job done, then that's not really a genuine 5-star review. And this has come up in a lot of different places where people are like recruiting the reviews in advance, or like in a way that's a little more manipulative. So then how do we really trust?
I was going to say, on the topic of marketing, do you think that with the rise of AI and the rise of social media and how things do become viral so quickly, are there any aspects of marketing that really don't apply anymore? The way the way you used to have a billboard or a magazine advertisement, is there stuff that is no longer as valid in today's day when it comes to marketing a product?
If you're in business, my friend Jay Abraham, who's probably the best marketer in the world today, Jay has some wonderful observations. He said, basically, what holds people back from buying a product or service that they want and need and can use and can benefit from? And the answer is risk. It's the fear of making a mistake. So everything that you do that lowers the perception of risk makes it easier for a person to buy it. And so Jay has a concept called risk reversal. And he sort of says that there's 100% of risk in every transaction. And the question is, who gets the risk and what percentage do they get? And he calls it risk reversal. He said, you must design your offering so that you take on 100% of the risk, and there is no risk for the customer. And how do you do that? Is you offer an unconditional guarantee. You say, if for any reason this transaction turns out to not be satisfactory to you, there is 0 risk, because I will take it back and give you your money back unconditionally without question. And that's why the companies like Amazon, companies like Nordstrom, the top Apple, the reason these companies are so successful is because they practice 100% risk reversal. One more point, and remember, everybody who's watching this is in sales of some kind. The more you sell, the more profits you make, the better your standard of living. And the key is at the moment of decision that the customer says yes. There's a book or article written called Everything Begins When the Customer Says Yes. But unless the customer says yes, nothing happens. Anyway, we talked about risk reversal, where you offer an unconditional guarantee. Jay has a wonderful concept called risk reversal plus a gift. So what you do is you say, if you buy my product or service, I'm going to give you this gift. And today, in the information age, it's usually a report of some kind. So there's no cost. You can put a price of $100 on it, and it's a report that's on a subject that's of value and help to the customer. And you say, and if you are not happy for any reason, not only will I give you 100% of your money back, but the gift is yours to keep for free. So it's risk reversal plus a gift. And it's a small idea, but it's one of the best ideas I've ever heard. And so you see now more and more people are doing that, is they offer you this free gift, which is usually very low cost, but very high value to the customer. And then they say, even if you don't like the product, you can keep the gift. And something to think about, something to add on to what you're offering. For more than 30 years, from the time that a businessman with 800 divisions asked me to speak on becoming a millionaire, and I spent 2 months in research and gave a talk called How to Become a Millionaire, 21 Great Ideas. And I was asked to give that talk over and over again as a 1 hour, 90-minute, half day, full day seminar, books, tapes, courses, videos, all over the world, how to become a millionaire in your own business. And I've given a lot of thought to it. And I thought of having a podcast or part of this podcast on how you as a business person can start, build, and manage a successful business and become a millionaire in about 5 to 7 years or faster. And if you would like us to expand on that topic and spend more time on how to become a millionaire, very practical, proven ideas. There's now 24 million self-made millionaires in America alone. And there's a standard process for starting from nothing and becoming a millionaire, which I've taught over the years, by the way, and it always works. It's astonishing how people double, triple, increase their income 10 times in their own business. And sometimes it's the salespeople.
Thank you guys for everyone's attention and time. We know it's very valuable. Thank you, David and Christina and Catherine, for helping me co-host. And of course, thank you to the Brian Tracy for this wonderful experience. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Love you. Everyone.
Write it down. Do it now.